So we're back with another episode of Life in Law, and today we have a special guest, Elle Ballester, who was actually one of our guests in our season finale of season 1. So thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Yes, of course. I'm glad to be back on the other side of things a little bit.
Yeah, and so for those of you who missed it, we actually had Elle interviewed in the prior episode last season, and she was in Las Colinas. I guess, is it considered prison in California, or is it jail?
It can be a local prison term, but it's also Las Colinas Detention Reentry Facility is what they call it.
Okay, so do you want to tell us a little bit about, what's new, what's changed, and how are you doing since then?
Right. So I'm doing a lot better. I'm back on my feet. I restarted my business. I've been building my clientele. I've been able to share the truth publicly, which is wonderful. A couple unfortunate family circumstances have arisen. It seems that my family has decided to sort of abandon me through this journey now, and I've had my belongings and money and property displaced, and so I'm still trying to recover all of that. So that's been a little bit strange through this journey. But at this point, I was able to be released from Las Colinas and then have continued to appeal and stand my ground with my case that I have always been innocent and that this was a very retaliatory and unlawful matter that should have never happened to begin with.
And so now, is it currently on appeal? Is your criminal case on appeal in California?
So my criminal case is on appeal, and it should be going before the Supreme Court or the California Supreme Court. I also have sent many motions to basically just vacate the entire case because of all of the constitutional violations, like the violation of a speedy trial, the violation of the right to bail, the violation of the right to self-represent. The whole entire process was just absolutely unconstitutional.
And has anyone from the state of California or from the San Diego County shown any accountability whatsoever for any of these violations?
Not completely. I will say that I was not put on probation, and the case was sort of closed and settled. And so that was a big, slight bit of accountability because they really showed that they were going to back down and to leave me alone. However, when it's come to the point of having enforceable custody claims or orders so that I can restore my access to my son and daughters who desperately need their mother, they have been very obstructive and continued this unlawful and irreparable harm.
And I'm so sorry about that. And it just seems like everything that you experienced while you were in jail was complete torture and inhumane. And from looking at some of the stories of things that I've heard from Las Colinas, it seems like it's not something new that they're notorious for giving people horrible conditions. And did you say that the conditions that you dealt with there were much worse than when you were in Florida initially?
Oh, absolutely. And there were several women who lost their lives while at Las Colinas while I was there. And that was really disheartening. I witnessed a lot of torture, cruel and unusual punishment. I witnessed a lot of horrific psychiatric procedures and treatments. And so I saw a lot of crime going on and a lot of torture that some very innocent and peaceful women have been unfortunately subjected to.
And I know that you and I spoke a lot when you were in there, and we'd have phone calls often. And I think one time I remember you saying something about they were basically telling you that you were being forced to give a blood sample and tried to take your blood without consent. Do you think that maybe they might have tried to do some type of strange experiments and things like that without people's consent?
Well, they do have to get consent, and that's the only way that it can be lawful. I think they might be doing experimenting without consent, but I have heard them say many times that it must be voluntary and that they need your consent. And because I wouldn't consent to this strange blood testing or DNA retrieval, they then put me in solitary confinement. So I was cruel and unusually punished for not consenting and not going along with this strange blood testing.
And did you meet any other women who were in there for similar charges where it had to do with custody and things like that?
I met a lot of women that I guess got into the system because of the family court that had been absolutely horrifically treated, tortured, that had wonderful lives and wonderful families and ended up either homeless or depressed or on drugs because of the horrible treatment that they endured through the County of San Diego family court system, or at the hands of a abusive partner.
And so do you think that, what are the things that you're doing now since you're out and getting back on your feet again to help with sort of coping with all of this? Because it's been so much trauma for you and being separated from your children, and you've been through so much and you seem to be so strong, and it seems like you're doing well. And so what are some of the things that you've been doing to cope and help dealing with all of this stress?
Well, I pray a lot, and this is gonna make me tear up a little bit, but I pray a lot for my sons and daughters, and I dream about them often. And so that helps to continue the closeness in my heart, and I can feel their little hearts still because I'm very connected with them. So I speak to them in my dreams, and that keeps my love strong. And so I've done a lot of forgiveness. So there's a lot of different ways to forgive people that have harmed you. And so that's a big part of healing. So I have forgiven everybody that took part in this, everybody that's been malicious. And then I've worked really hard on focusing on a path forward. So rebuilding my business, sharing the story in a peaceful, non-combative way, doing everything possible to show my competency and my stability so that there are no false narratives that can survive. I have been for quite some time, but definitely after this experience, 100% sober so that I can be pure-minded and pure-bodied. I've gone vegan so that I can be a very clear vessel. I'm a spiritual healer, and so I learned the healing code, which is a very effective way to heal your immune system and to restore your nervous system after you go through trauma. I've worked with a spiritual psychologist, and all of that has helped a lot.
That's good. And I think it's good that you're using different tools and resources. And you mentioned forgiveness. And I think for myself and a lot of people, it's one of the hardest things to do because, you know, they say you do it for yourself, not for them. But to be able to actually let go and forgive and not hold on to the anger and the hate is something that I think is really hard. So do you think that doing that makes you feel better and really like release a lot of that inner anger?
Well, so anger, and even in the Bible in Ephesians, it says, be angry and do not sin. So anger is just an emotion that comes from grief. So we just have to transmute it. And so transmuting it through exercise or through just having a moment by yourself where you get really clear with God and you can turn all your anger to God, right? And give it all up. And so that becomes the burden for God to handle and transmute. And so anger creates leaky holes for like parasitic or demonic thoughts and stuff to come into our space. So once you have awareness of what's going on, and awareness is the key to everything. So being aware that, okay, well, this makes me angry because really I feel heartbroken, or because really I feel sad because I love my sons and daughters and I would love to be reconnected with them, then that helps you view it for what it is, release it, and move forward.
I like that. I think that's a good way to sort of frame it. And I mean, obviously it seems obvious that being not in a jail cell, being able to be in nature and have fresh air and sunshine and feeling it on your skin, do you feel like now you're in a way better state of mind where you can see things with more clarity and be able to focus on the path? And the reason I ask is because so many people find themselves trying to fight these battles from behind bars. And what can you say about the difference between being free and fighting for your life versus fighting from the inside?
Well, there's actually a book called We're All Doing Time. And so people can be in just as much of a prison free outside of a jail cell because of their own thoughts and feelings as somebody who's inside a jail cell. So actually peace, and the peace that I found it inside the jail cell. I had forgiveness inside there. I learned the healing code when I was in jail and I began doing it. So I actually restored myself and established peace from inside the jail cell, and then I've carried it forward. Sometimes even outside, it can be more stressful out in nature and out in society because there's more pressure on you. So peace is really found within, regardless of the external circumstances. And the book We're All Doing Times really enlightened me and made me aware of how much other people are suffering. So it gave me the perspective of the ones that are so maliciously doing this to very loving and kind women or men, because this happens to men too. They're actually already in a prison. They're in a prison of hatred and resentment and anger and stress. And then they're projecting and harming other people because of it. And so their life is not any better than somebody who's sitting in a jail cell who might have absolute peace. And so many of the women that were in there, I mean, I met women that had been wrongfully accused of attempted murder that spent 10 years in a prison for something they didn't do. And they taught me the ways of finding peace, even in a situation like that. And to me, that was really remarkable.
Yeah. And to be able to go through, what was it, 11 months sitting in jail without bail? Is that what you ended up with, 11 months?
So I did 366 days, which is a year and a day. And the first 9 months and 8 days I was deprived bail, even though there was no conviction and there was no trial, which is absolutely criminal and unconstitutional. It's almost unheard of. And then after that, I was unlawfully targeted again with a no bail bench warrant for a court date in which I especially appeared over the phone. And they tried to claim that I didn't appear. And so then they unlawfully issued a bench warrant that they didn't sign. There was no signature on it again. And I ended up doing 2.5 months with no bail on that. And then the case ended up being settled and closed.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of a first-time arrest resulting in somebody being held without bail for 10 months and then 2 months after. Like, you say it's unheard of. I'm pretty sure you're probably the only person this has ever happened to that I've heard of. So,
well, not
insane.
to mention they have first attached a $2 million bail to my persons, and absolutely, that was so defamatory. I mean, that large amount of bail for a mother that was merely traveling safely with her own son and daughters. And in my situation, my co-parent had actually dropped my son and daughters at my house, and I had full lawful custody of them. So there's no way that a mother can kidnap her own son and daughters that she has full lawful custody of that were dropped off at her house. So there was no reason to even do such a ridiculous and retaliatory defamation and cruel and unusual punishment. And then to further deprive me of the opportunity to even present evidence of my innocence in front of a jury. That's a horrible part of this, is that you cannot deprive anybody their day to prove their innocence.
Yeah, and like the fact that you said that they didn't let you be pro se. somebody from my state said that now what they're doing is in criminal cases, if somebody says they want to be pro se and refuses to get a public defender, they will force the person to go to this place called Whiting Forensic Hospital for the criminally insane. And it's basically a state-run mental institution where they'll put people who are under the custody usually of like DOC, they'll send them there. But this is now what they're doing is when people are unsentenced before trial and just for simply requesting to be pro se, they force them to go to this institution to stay for anywhere from 30 to 90 days against their will, where they are forcibly injected with medications. The lights are left on 24/7. They wake them up every hour to take blood for no reason. Things like that are like human rights violations, like, you know, back to like the Nuremberg trials, like all of these things, they say like just following orders is not an excuse. Like these things are happening in hospitals and prisons all over America. And so the fact that just simply because you want to be pro se means you need to go and get injected with unknown medications and forcibly hospitalized against your will, it's almost like a punishment. And the fact that with your case, they flat out said, no, you can't be pro se, which is so unconstitutional. And then they just like continue to force this public defender to represent you when she was not helping you.
Yeah. Well, actually, they tried to do that with me. They did a competency hold for 6 weeks, and they threatened to send me to a state hospital and to force medicate me. And luckily, or because I am competent and sound of mind, the county of San Diego, I had a lot of incredible divine intervention. So the professional doctor with the county of San Diego, she found me to be competent, and they were not allowed to do what you're talking about. They were unable to do that. And so that was one of the ways in which they did cease and desist that type of horrific treatment. But I've seen them do it to a lot of women, and it's absolutely unlawful. It's cruel. It's not okay. And then when I went through my second unlawful detainment, it actually appears that somebody was maybe potentially coercing members in my family to try to coerce me to voluntarily go to one of those institutions because they felt it would be safer for me than to come out and face the retaliation and harassment that I've been facing since I came out. And so I don't fault my family for trying to coerce me into that, but I do think that you have to stand strong sometimes. And because of all this harassment, I've actually had to hire a security team and private investigators and private investigative journalists to protect me, because it's pretty severe, the potential for retaliation when you come out of something like this and you have come out without being institutionalized and you have a claim of competency.
Yeah, and it's like they kind of bank on women not making it out alive or not making it out to see the other side and tell their story. And the fact that you're able to come and, you know, present yourself looking beautiful, looking healthy and educated and speaking your story and telling the truth, it's sort of like a threat to them. And do you think that you will be able to get justice through the court, whether the state or federal systems in California or other states? Do you believe that there is a path within the court system for justice, or do you believe that it will have to be a different route?
So I will be getting justice, but it's going to be through the international realm. And so that's where my case is going to go before. It's going to be an international court. And through that, I will be getting justice, and so will my sons and daughters. And because I am an Indigenous woman with protected treaty rights, and they've all been everybody's been noticed, and I have the lawful ability to stand on these treaty protections, the case is going to really move forward internationally. And I think with the help of my security team and some of the private investigators, as well as, I mean, this story has gone so public that I have some very prominent men and women that really want to help, and the amount of reach out that I've had and the amount of people that want to make sure that this gets to the international arena and that justice is served is actually much greater than I expected.
That's good. And it's kind of sad that, you know, it has come to that extreme, but sometimes when in extreme situations, you know, you need to do extreme things, and taking it to the international level also makes it available for international media to report on it. And sometimes you see like local media sources will not want to make the judges look bad. They don't want to put bad press on themselves. But when you take it outside their jurisdiction and they see a mother of 5 children who hasn't seen their kids in going on 2 years, it's unheard of. I mean, you don't do drugs, you don't abuse your kids, you don't neglect your kids. You've given your kids a great life and been all about your children. And I think that, you know, you have a lot of followers. You have a huge like following on social media, and you've been like a big like social media personality for many years. And it seems like now you're back on TikTok, you're on Facebook. Do you feel like now more comfortable talking about what happened versus before? Do you think now you're more open about it?
Yeah, I think I was really terrorized and traumatized from speaking completely about it. But the good thing is that I think that accountability needs to be put on the right shoulders. So a lot of people want to put the accountability on these judicial officers. And while they are accountable for their errors, the real accountability needs to go on the shoulders of the actual abuser, right? So that would be my ex-husband. He brought this matter forward. He started the controversy in our family. He was the one harming our daughter. He was the one that was harming our older children and scaring and terrorizing them. He's the one that has harmed and terrorized me with his false narrative and his lies. And so the real accountability needs to be put on him. And then the team that has enabled him to create this false narrative, to cause such defamation, harm, cruel and unusual punishment. And that's where you then hold the officials, actors, and agents liable for basically enabling a man like that to do this much harm. So that's where the strategy is going to be more like the real abuser is the one who's doing it. And then any of these agents, actors, and government officials that want to continue to enable it, they've been noticed and notified that if you continue to enable that's where your liability comes into play. So they've all had the option to either stand down, which actually several of them have. I had a lot of judicial officers that wouldn't even have this matter presented before them. So I'll give some of them the credit that they showed some form of integrity and judicial, you know, they followed their judicial canons, because they wouldn't even touch this case, right? So we have to give, there's always some good guys within the bad guys, right? And there's a lot of undercover. This is one thing that people don't completely realize. There's a lot of people undercover that are witnessing all the crimes that are taking place. And so it might seem like somebody's getting away with something for a while, but there are undercover agents and investigators that are watching, witnessing, and recording everything that's going on. And a lot of times what I found is that these abusers and their enablers, they're very sloppy. They have a lot of conversations, a lot of email conversations about what they're doing. They have a lot of public photos out and about in the community, together, drinking and partying. And they just leave such a trail of evidence that it really needs to go on to those people and be less about the government agencies, because in a way, they almost get roped in to these abusers' false narrative too.
Yeah, and especially when you have, you know, people that have connections with the military and things like that, they will abuse and exploit their power and maybe manipulate the others to make them think it's okay. And then by the time those people realize what happened, they're so deep into it that it's almost safer in their eyes to continue with upholding the lies than to say, oh, wait, we made a mistake. We broke the law. We did something wrong, because then that hurts them. So it's kind of hard. And I've seen so many women who have had spouses that were in the military that they ended up going through nightmare situations in family court. And it seems as if, you know, men who are lawyers, you know, military, police, like in any position where you have some type of power or authority, it's like easy for them to exploit and abuse that. And I think that it's, you know, it's really difficult, but like you said, they become sloppy and they almost become empowered every time they get away with it. Every time something happens and they don't get arrested or a case gets thrown out, they get more and more empowered. So they become more and more sloppy. They're like, well, I don't care. I don't have to hide what I'm doing because I won't get in trouble. But like you said, sometimes it might take years. And I know like federal investigations, people don't get indicted until the federal government has their case ready to go. And you'll see investigations that go on for years before the person even gets notified about the investigation. So I know that I've been really focused on trying to hold these people that have harmed me and my children accountable criminally, because, you know, suing them is one thing, but when you're reporting these as high level federal crimes to the highest level law enforcement in the country, and they're responding saying, now we're investigating, here's your case number, you know, at that point, you know that you're getting your message across. And I think that like being on social media and telling your story and putting yourself out there also gives you some protection, because it's a lot harder to just harm somebody when the world is watching. And in your case, you have a lot of people watching from all over the country, really.
Well, all over the world, actually. I've had international sources reach out, and the main characters in this, they are under investigation, as you've said. And what you're saying is accurate. They think that they're not, and so they become very arrogant, but they are. And then it just actually, it grows the evidence trail against them. And it grows it and grows it and grows it. And actually, I wanted to say something, because you said it's they believe they have an authority, and actually they don't have an authority to be doing what they're doing, because authority really comes from the divine. It comes from God. And when you are not following natural laws and you're not following God's law, you're not following higher cosmic laws and spiritual laws, which actually many attorneys do know. And they know when somebody starts crossing the line, because they don't want to have those burdens on their backs either. But when you're not following those, you have no authority at all. And what you're doing is actually just straight up causing harm. And so further, what I was going to add to that, I don't know why I just forgot my train of thought, but it's a lot of times their arrogance, and then they continue on with what they're doing, and it creates a stronger and stronger case against them, so that when the indictment comes out, they're not getting out of it. They're not getting out of it.
Exactly. And really, like, you know, like these men, a lot of them, they get off on the power trip. They need that control. As soon as you want to leave the marriage or leave the relationship, all of a sudden, we need to attack. We need to, you know, go after you, because God forbid you're going to go be happy without me. That's how a lot of them think, that have these like control issues. And in the end, the only people who get hurt are the children who are getting caught in the middle. And I can only imagine, you know, how do your kids feel? You have 5 children and you haven't seen any of your kids now in like a year and a half or longer.
Well, I was with my youngest sons up until this second incarceration. And unfortunately, because of a lot of the pressures on my family and the coercion and a lot of the miscommunication, that's really what's going on. There's a really grave misunderstanding of this case. And there's been a lot of blame shifting onto me. And there's a lot of lack of knowledge that the one who really is doing the crimes is being investigated, and they will be brought to an indictment. And I am just taking the brunt force of it right now. And then also, I think there's a lot of misguidance to the sheriffs and some of these law enforcement agencies, where they believe that they have some sort of qualified immunity, when in fact they do not have that. And so they act very recklessly, and then they can be on the receiving end of criminal and federal indictments as well, for attempted murder, kidnapping, for 18 USC 241 and 242. And they actually have more liability than some of these abusers, because they can lose everything when they don't follow the law, and when they go after these false allegations and they don't properly make sure that they are following things to a T. They don't have this qualified immunity that they think they do. They might get away with it for a little while, but they really don't have it. And my goal with making this statement is that these officers and law enforcement, if they're really out there trying to protect the peace and just do their job, they need to become aware of how much liability they really have and the fact that they don't have qualified immunity.
Yeah, and it's like, I think that any officer, I think they have a duty that if they're given an order that is unconstitutional or illegal, they have a duty to disobey that order. And you even see people that are military right now saying, I took an oath, I have a duty, I'm not going to follow this order, that order, because it goes against human rights and the Constitution. And I think that we need to see more people who are not scared, people in those positions who are not scared to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to just follow what I'm being told. I'm going to question this and verify it before I just blindly enforce something that doesn't feel right. And so, you know,
I would say that those are, if there are officers in the military coming forward and doing that they are very wise, because the tables are rapidly turning right now. And they do have an oath to uphold the Constitution for the United States, 1787. And they actually do take on liability when they violate it. They might not think that they are, but they actually are. And in my situation, that's been heavily a part of this, because I'm dealing with a military officer that is depriving and also conspiring to deprive fundamental rights that are protected not only by treaty protection, but also the Constitution for the United States. And he's not just depriving me, he's depriving my son and daughters too. And so he has a huge and heavy liability, but his arrogance has not allowed him to act with honor, with clean hands, or with good faith. And those things, it might take time for those to come forward, but they will come forward.
Yeah, and then doesn't the military have their own, process of disciplining, and people can be reported to their higher ups as well for misconduct, both on and off duty?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely a process. And at first, the military will be rather protective of some of these officers. But when there's a reoccurring pattern and just it becomes so obvious that it's happening, there even will become pressure that's put on them, especially right now with the changing environment in America, because there's a lot of change happening and there's a new administration that has a lot of different standards and protocols and way in which they're holding some of these officers accountable. And so if anything at this time, if somebody's in the military, they should really, really take the time to truly think about the actions that they're taking and the fact that they can be held liable in international court for torture, for human rights violations. And that's a very severe consequence and punishments. Like, we're talking Guantanamo Bay. And those are things that they should truly consider before acting just based off something that they believe to be in order.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, what do you think was, the motivation behind all this? Do you think it was money? Do you think it was covering up abuse? What was the main nucleus that caused all this?
I think there were varying levels of nucleus, right? So I think some of it was retaliation because I exposed a rather large bribery, corruption, just unlawful scheme. And that wasn't really my intent. My intent was only to have a estoppel and to have protection for my daughter and my older daughter and son. And so they took my estoppel as a reason to retaliate. And that's really offhand. It's not okay. And then I think there was a lot of retaliation because of fear around exposure of potential sexual abuse or physical harm to my sons and daughters, and any further exposure. And then there was a lot of what appears to be intent to deprive my right to entitlement to a retirement, or to cause financial duress, or to silence me. And so the intent appears to be pretty clear. I think that it got to a certain level where some of the higher up players might have brought upon a stand down order, but it seems like some of the low level don't seem to be following whatever stand down order was given to them.
And do you believe that there's also a lot of statewide corruption, not just with a county level? I know that I've seen lots of different celebrities speaking out, like example, Spencer Pratt mentioning a lot of stuff going on with Governor Newsom and misuse of funding and things like that. Do you think that California has some serious problems on a higher level in the state as well that impacted what happened with you?
I think that they have. I will say it appears that there were a few undercover actors and agents within the state of California system that did stand up and work to actively get me out of this situation. So I think there's a mix going on. And I think the ones that are corrupt and have committed these crimes need to realize that there are people undercover watching them, and that they're not as, they shouldn't be as arrogant as they have been. And so I think there's a combination of both going on, but I know Spencer Pratt has brought forward a lot of the information that I already knew. And then I think that actually Donald Trump has been exposing as well about the state of California and a lot of what has been going on, the mismanagement. I recently was up and I met with a few senators for California state, and they are aware of what's going on, and they have been working to try to fix some of this. California has a great republic, and they also have a lot of people that really stand for the truth and stand for the original California Constitution. And so we have a mix of a movement here of people that are trying to make sure that honor is upheld, good faith, integrity, and that this state can be restored to its original republic. So that definitely is going on here. I do have another interview that I have to hop on right now. And I just wanted to say that I really honor you for interviewing me and getting my story out there, and that I definitely want to continue to lead with peace and love and forgiveness for all of these, and not necessarily make anybody feel that they are going to be on the receiving end of any consequences other than ones that they basically accrued from their own actions.
I agree. And thank you again so much for your time. And, you're amazing, and keep staying strong, keep doing what you're doing. And everybody supports you, and we're all watching and for updates. So
wonderful. And what we really need is justice for my beautiful 2 daughters and my wonderful 3 sons that more than anything want restoration with their mother, that have the right to have restoration with their mother, and that anybody who is unlawfully concealing, withholding, or stopping that, those are the ones that are accruing consequences, and it needs to end now.
Absolutely. And it will. And the tables are going to turn, and they're already halfway. So.
Okay. Well, wonderful. I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.